was standing in my son's backyard at his engagement party. Suddenly, my 9-year-old granddaughter grabbed my hand and whispered, "Grandma, we need to go check the garden shed right now." I asked her, "Why, sweetheart?" She looked terrified and said, "Grandma, I saw something bad in there. Please come with me." We walked quietly to the shed. I'm so glad you're here. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story from. I want to know how far it has reached. I was standing in the middle of my son Robert's backyard in Portland, Oregon. The afternoon sun was warm and the smell of barbecue filled the air. My granddaughter Emma was next to me, a sweet girl with long brown hair that her mother used to braid every morning. Today was the engagement party of my son Robert to his new girlfriend Jessica. Emma was playing with her doll, brushing its hair over and over again. Her green eyes seemed lost in thought, not really paying attention to the adults laughing and talking around us. I looked at her and smiled. I gently fixed the ribbon in her hair, a yellow one that matched her sundress. It reminded me so much of her mother, Karen, whose warm hugs I still remember every single day. The sound of country music played from the speakers, mixing with people chatting, and the sound of beer bottles opening. Robert's backyard was decorated nicely with paper lanterns hanging from the trees and tables covered with red checkered tablecloths. I looked around searching for Robert. He was busy talking to his friends by the grill, flipping burgers with a big smile on his face. He seemed happy, like he wanted everyone to see that he had moved on since Karen passed away. Across the yard, Jessica, my son's new girlfriend, was laughing loudly with her friends. She wore a tight white dress and high heels that seemed wrong for a backyard party. Her laugh was loud and fake, like she was trying too hard to be the center of attention. I watched her and felt something uncomfortable in my stomach, a weird feeling, but I told myself I was just being an overprotective mother. People moved around the yard, getting more food from the tables, refilling their drinks, and sitting in the lawn chairs. An older neighbor came up to me with a friendly smile. "Emma is getting so tall." "How old is she now, Margaret?" I smiled back and said quietly, "She just turned 9 last month. Time goes by so fast." Then I reached for a plate to get Emma some potato salad. The girl looked up at me, her eyes grateful, but then she looked down again and went back to playing with her doll, like that toy was the only safe thing in the world. Suddenly, Emma stopped. Her small hands stopped moving, and her round eyes stared at me with a look that was too serious for a 9-year-old. I felt worried. A bad feeling went through my whole body. She grabbed my hand tight. Her little fingers were cold as ice. In a scared voice, she whispered, "Grandma, we need to go to the garden shed right now." Her voice shook like she was trying to hold back fear she couldn't explain. My heart started beating fast. I bent down and put my hand on her shoulder. "What's wrong, honey? Tell me what's happening." Emma shivered, pressing her lips together tight. And then she whispered so quietly that I had to lean closer to hear. "Grandma, I heard Jessica talking on the phone in there. She said bad things about you and me." Her words hit me like a punch to the chest. A terrible feeling started growing inside me, making it hard to breathe. I tried to stay calm and stroked her hair, but her scared look made me know this was serious. "It's okay, sweetie. Let's go check together," I said, trying to sound calm even though my own heart was racing. Carefully, we walked across the yard toward the old wooden shed at the back. Emma held my hand tight, her small body pressed against my side. The shed door was slightly open, and I could see darkness inside. We got closer, and I pushed the door open wider. Inside, hanging on a nail on the wall, was Jessica's phone. She must have left it there by accident. The screen was still lit up, showing a text message conversation that was still open. I picked up the phone with shaking hands. The people at the party were still laughing and eating, but right then my whole world became just me, Emma, and that phone screen. I read the messages. They were between Jessica and someone named M. The words made my blood turn cold. got the old lady to trust me finally. Once we're married, I'll get Robert to put her in a nursing home. Then we can sell her house and split the money." Another message said, "The kid is annoying. I'll send her to boarding school as soon as possible. Robert won't argue once I'm his wife." A few words, but they felt like a knife going into my heart. I felt sick to my stomach. Emma was right. This woman wanted to destroy our family. She wanted to take everything from us. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped the phone. I looked at Emma, whose eyes were filled with tears. I hugged her tight, feeling her small body trembling against mine. The laughter and music outside continued, but for me, everything became silent and heavy. Memories of better times filled my mind, taking me away from that dark shed and back to when our family was complete. I remember Karen, my first daughter-in-law, like I remember sunshine on a spring morning. Her smile was kind and real. She always made me feel loved and welcome. Karen never said a mean word, never made me feel like I was in the way. She was the kind of person who made everyone around her feel better. I still remember those Saturday afternoons in the suburbs of Portland when I would visit Robert and Karen's small house. The sound of Emma's laughter would fill the living room as she played with her toys. Karen would be in the kitchen making her famous apple pie, humming a song while she worked. "Mom, Margaret, come taste this and tell me if it needs more cinnamon," she would say to me, her voice full of warmth as she handed me a spoon. I would sit at their kitchen table, talking with her about everything while Emma coloured pictures at our feet. But my most beautiful and most painful memory is the day Emma got lost at the shopping mall. She was only 5 years old. Karen was crying, her whole body shaking with fear. "Mom, Margaret, I can't find her. What if something happened to her?" she said, her voice breaking. I held her hand tight while we searched everywhere, asking security for help. When we finally found Emma hiding under a clothing rack, scared and crying, Karen collapsed to her knees and hugged her daughter, tears streaming down her face. Thank God you're safe," she kept saying over and over. I knelt down next to them, my arms around both of them, and we all cried together. I thought this little family would stay happy forever, like a perfect picture that never changes. But then, one terrible day, everything broke apart. The phone call came while I was folding laundry in my living room. The serious voice of a police officer came through the phone. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm sorry to tell you there's been an accident." I don't remember what happened next. I just know my hands were shaking so bad that I dropped the phone and it cracked on the floor. Karen died instantly when a drunk driver hit her car on the interstate. She was coming home from the grocery store. I stood there frozen, feeling like the world had ended. Karen's funeral was on a cold, rainy day. The rain poured down without stopping, like the sky was crying for her too. Emma, who was only 6 years old then, was in my arms, looking confused at everyone with her innocent eyes, not understanding why everyone was sad. "Grandma, when is Mommy coming home?" she asked in her small voice. I hugged her tighter, trying not to cry, and said, "Your Mommy is in heaven now, sweetheart." But inside I was breaking into pieces. Robert, my son, fell apart at the funeral. His whole body shook as he cried, and he couldn't speak. I knew he was trying to be strong, but his eyes were empty, like part of his soul died with Karen. After that terrible day, Robert changed completely. He threw himself into his work. He would leave home early in the morning and come back late at night when Emma was already sleeping. I understood he was running away, trying to fill the huge hole in his heart by working all the time. But Emma, my poor girl, suffered the most. She stopped talking as much. Her eyes often looked sad, like she was waiting for a miracle to bring her mother back. I became her main support. I picked her up from school every afternoon and tucked her into bed every night. "Grandma, tell me a story about Mommy," she would ask me, and I would tell her, my voice cracking, about the times Karen sang lullabies to her, how she made pancakes shaped like hearts on Sunday mornings. Every story was my way of keeping Karen's memory alive in Emma's heart and in mine. Sarah, my adopted daughter, also became an important part of those sad days. With her kind heart and gentle ways, she would come to the house often, bringing colouring books and cookies she baked. Sarah loved Emma like her own little sister. She would hold her, teach her to read, and sit with her for hours helping her with homework. "Look, Emma, you spelled that word perfectly," she would say, her voice cheerful and encouraging. But sometimes I would see Sarah looking at Robert when he came home tired from work. It was a deep look that showed something more than just caring about a brother. I noticed it, but I didn't say anything. Maybe I was scared that if I mentioned it, I would mess up what was left of our family. Robert's house slowly became quiet and sad. But thanks to Sarah and Emma, there was still some warmth left, even if it was small. I did everything I could to keep our family together. But deep in my heart, I knew that both Robert and I were living with pain that never fully went away. The memory of that spring afternoon is still clear in my mind like it happened yesterday. I was sitting in my small living room, listening to birds singing outside, with a heart full of mixed feelings. It was the first time my son Robert was bringing Jessica home to meet me. I tried to keep an open mind. I tried to see this young woman through the eyes of a mother who wants her son to be happy again after so much sadness. But deep down, I couldn't shake a feeling of worry, like cold wind that made me shiver. That afternoon, Robert arrived later than he said he would. I was in the kitchen making the meatloaf that Emma loves when I heard the door open. Robert came in with a strange look on his face. His eyes were bright like they used to be when he was young, when he talked about Karen with love he couldn't hide. "Mom," he said in an excited voice standing in the doorway, "I want you to meet someone." I stopped what I was doing and looked at him, feeling a bit nervous. "Someone special?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Robert smiled, a smile I hadn't seen in a long time. "Yes, I think you're really going to like her," he said, sounding confident. I nodded. I wiped my hands on my apron, trying to hide the worry that was growing inside me. After Karen died, I wasn't sure anyone could fill the empty space she left, not just for Robert, but also for Emma and for me. That evening, Jessica showed up. She walked into my house wearing a fancy red dress, her blonde hair styled perfectly, and her lips painted bright pink. Her smile seemed too perfect, like she had practiced it in a mirror. "It's so nice to meet you, Mrs. Thompson," she said in a sweet voice, nodding her head slightly. I smiled back, invited her in, and poured her a cup of coffee. "Your house is really cozy," Jessica said, as her eyes looked around at the family photos on the walls. There was one of Karen holding baby Emma. I nodded and thanked her, but I noticed her eyes stayed on that photo longer than seemed normal, and I wasn't sure I liked it. Dinner went on while I tried to be friendly and welcoming. I put out all the food I had spent the afternoon making: meatloaf with gravy, mashed potatoes with butter, and a green bean casserole, Emma's favourite. Robert sat next to Jessica, his eyes never leaving her. His happiness showed in everything he did. "Mum, Jessica works in sales at a big company downtown." "She's really good at her job," he said, his voice full of pride. Jessica smiled. She took some mashed potatoes with a careful movement that seemed fake. "Mrs. Thompson, this is delicious. You'll have to teach me your recipes," she said, giving me a friendly look. I smiled and answered politely, but something about the way she talked, the way she laughed, made me feel like I was watching an act. Emma, my granddaughter, was sitting at the end of the table, unusually quiet. She normally wouldn't stop talking about what happened at school, but that night she just pushed her food around her plate without looking up once. I noticed she was avoiding Jessica's eyes, like she was trying to become invisible. Jessica leaned over, pulled a candy bar from her purse, and put it in front of Emma with a big smile. "This is for you, sweetie." "It's really good," she said in a voice that sounded too sweet, like honey that's gone bad. But Emma sat still, her small hands holding her fork tight, and then she just turned her head away without touching the candy. I saw fear flash in her eyes, and my heart felt squeezed. Robert frowned, about to tell Emma off. Emma, that's rude. Jessica gave you candy. I quickly stopped him. She's just tired from school. Leave her alone, son. Robert sighed, but didn't say anything more. He turned to pour Jessica more wine, like he wanted to make the mood lighter. Sarah, my adopted daughter, was also at dinner. She sat across from me, eating quietly, but I saw how her face changed when Jessica took Robert's hand under the table. Sarah has always been a sensitive girl, and I know she loves Robert like a brother, but sometimes I wonder if her feelings go deeper than that. When Jessica held Robert's hand, Sarah's hand stopped over her glass, and I saw her fingers squeeze tight. She didn't say anything. She just looked down and kept eating. But that silence felt heavier than words. I wanted to ask her what was wrong. I wanted to understand what was making her sad, but I knew this wasn't the right time. After dinner, Jessica insisted on helping with the dishes, even though I said no several times. Mrs. Thompson, please let me help. You should rest, she said, sounding very eager. I gave in and watched her go to the kitchen, roll up her sleeves, and start washing dishes while humming a cheerful song. I have to admit she did everything perfectly. The dishes were stacked neatly and the sink was spotless. For a moment I thought, maybe this girl really does care. But then, when I went to the living room, I saw Emma sitting on the floor, colouring with crayons. Jessica walked over and sat next to her, smiling. You're a good artist, Emma. What are you drawing? Can I see? But Emma immediately put down the crayon and moved away with a look of fear on her face, like Jessica was dangerous. Jessica looked at me and quickly forced a smile, like she was trying to cover up the awkward moment. She's such a shy girl, she said in that same sweet voice. But I saw something strange in her eyes, something that didn't match her smile. Robert, meanwhile, didn't seem to notice anything wrong. He was busy pouring more wine, telling funny stories from work, and laughing loudly every time Jessica made a joke. The meeting ended with my son completely happy, saying goodbye to Jessica at the door with his eyes fixed on her like she was the only person in the world. I stood there watching them leave, feeling strange in my heart, like something wasn't right. Time went by and Jessica slowly became part of our lives. One Saturday morning, with bright Oregon sunshine coming through the windows, I was knitting a blanket when Jessica appeared, smiling big. Mrs. Thompson, I want to take Emma to the zoo today. Is that okay? She asked, her voice full of fake excitement. I looked at Emma, who was on the floor building with blocks, her face showing no emotion. Sure, I'm sure she would enjoy that, I said, forcing a smile even though I felt doubt inside. Robert had gone to work, and I thought maybe some fresh air would be good for Emma. Jessica took Emma's hand and led her to the door while I watched them go, feeling heavy in my heart. When they came back, Jessica walked in with a big smile. She had so much fun. She loved the elephants and wanted ice cream twice, she said, sounding excited. But when I looked at Emma, I saw her shirt was dirty with stains on the pink fabric I had washed that morning. She was silent, holding her doll without saying anything about the zoo trip. Did you have fun, honey? I asked, kneeling down to touch her hair. She just nodded a little bit, looking away. I wanted to ask more, to know why she was so quiet. But Jessica interrupted with her always sweet voice. I already told you, Mrs. Thompson. She loved it. I nodded, but inside a small piece of doubt started forming. Another time, while Robert was at work, Jessica showed up without calling first. I was in the kitchen making soup for lunch when I heard her talking to Emma in the living room. At first her voice was soft, but then I heard something harsh. Sit still, Emma. Stop making a mess. You're 9 years old, but you act like a baby. I froze, my hands stopping over the onions I was cutting, and a chill went through me. I walked out of the kitchen, and right away Jessica changed her voice, becoming sweet like nothing happened. Emma is so smart. Look at the tower she built with blocks, she said, pointing at the blocks Emma was playing with, smiling big. But Emma just pressed her lips together and looked at me like she was asking for help. I tried to smile and said, "Yes, she's very clever," but inside the worry was growing, like a thorn digging into my heart. I tried to calm myself down. Maybe she's just not used to kids. Everyone is awkward at first. Emma's 9th birthday is a memory I'll never forget. Sarah, my adopted daughter, spent all morning baking a vanilla cake with strawberries, Emma's favourite. When she arrived with the cake and put it on the table with candles lit, Emma screamed with happiness, her eyes lit up for the first time in months. "Aunt Sarah, this is my favourite cake," she said, running to hug her. Sarah smiled, touched her hair, and said gently, "I made it just for you, sweetheart. Eat as much as you want." I watched them with a warm heart, feeling like our family was healing. Jessica was also there, but she only clapped in a fake way, standing in the corner with a tired smile. Her only gift for Emma was a quick pat on the head and "Happy birthday, kid." I saw Emma shrink back, avoiding her eyes, and my heart hurt again. I wanted to say something, but I stayed quiet, telling myself not to interfere. Another time, Robert took Jessica and Emma to the supermarket. I stayed home, but when they came back, I heard Jessica complaining in an annoyed voice. "Emma knocked over a whole display of canned soup, and I had to apologize to the manager. What a clumsy kid." Robert frowned and turned to scold Emma. "Emma, you're a big girl now. You need to be more careful." I saw Emma look down, her hands folded together, and her eyes looking at me like she needed help. I quickly walked over and put my hand on her shoulder. "Don't worry, honey. Accidents happen." But inside, I couldn't stop wondering why Jessica got so angry so easily at a child. Why couldn't she be gentle, like Karen had been? One afternoon, when I went to pick up Emma from school, her teacher pulled me aside and said in a quiet but worried voice, "Mrs. Thompson, Emma has been very quiet lately and seems withdrawn. Is everything okay at home?" I froze, but I tried to act like it was nothing. "I'm sure it's just all the changes, Mrs. Davis. Don't worry." But on the way home, Emma pulled on my jacket and said in a shaking voice, "Grandma, I don't want to be alone with Miss Jessica." I stopped and bent down to look into her green eyes, my heart feeling squeezed. "Why do you say that, sweetheart?" "Miss Jessica cares about you," I said. But as soon as I said it, I knew I was wrong. Emma shook her head with firm determination in her eyes. "No, Grandma. She doesn't like me." I touched her hair, trying to calm her, but inside I couldn't deny that the girl was telling the truth. Sarah, who was nearby, heard everything. She turned away quietly, but I saw her shoulders move slightly, like she was holding back anger. All those small signs, all those little warnings, I had seen them, but I had chosen to ignore them. And that's how we got to the day of my son's engagement party. That afternoon, the warm Oregon sun shined through the trees, filling Robert's backyard with golden light, like it wanted to celebrate his happy day. I was sitting at a picnic table next to my granddaughter Emma and Sarah, my adopted daughter. Emma was playing with her doll, whispering to it softly. I looked at her, and my heart filled with love. Sarah, wearing a simple blue dress, was sitting on the other side, leaning over sometimes to say something in Emma's ear, with a smile as sweet as morning sunshine. "Eat another cookie, sweetie," she said, breaking a chocolate chip cookie into pieces for her. I smiled watching them, feeling a little bit of comfort in my heart. Even though our family had been through so much pain, having Sarah and Emma was like a warm fire on a cold night. Robert, my son, dressed in nice khaki pants and a button-down shirt, was walking between the tables, holding up his beer to toast with relatives. His face showed happiness. His big smile seemed to want to erase the dark years after Karen died. I looked at him, feeling both proud and sad. I wanted to believe he had found happiness again, that Jessica, the woman in the tight white dress who was laughing loudly with her friends, would give him a new start. But every time I looked at Jessica, who was drinking wine and never putting down her glass, I felt something like a thorn poking my heart. Her smile seemed too perfect, like a mask carefully put on. The soft sound of country music played, mixing with people talking. The waiters moved around quietly, bringing out plates of barbecue chicken, corn on the cob, coleslaw, and bowls of potato salad. I noticed that Emma only took a small piece of chicken and then carefully pushed the coleslaw away. I frowned and asked her quietly, "Don't you like that, honey?" The girl shook her head, looking away like she was hiding something. I wanted to ask more, but a relative interrupted, saying cheerfully, "Emma is growing up so fast, Margaret. Look how tall she's gotten." I smiled and said, "She's becoming a smart young lady." But inside, I couldn't help worrying. Emma had never refused food in such a strange way. In the distance, I saw Jessica's eyes turn toward our table. The smile on her face seemed to freeze for a second, just long enough that nobody else noticed, before she turned to keep toasting with another guest. I tried to ignore my worry, telling myself I was thinking too much, but then everything changed in one moment. Emma, who was still playing with her doll, dropped it by accident, and the doll rolled under the table. The girl quickly bent down to pick it up, but I saw her freeze, her eyes wide, staring at something. I leaned over to ask what was wrong when Emma pointed toward the garden shed at the back of the yard with shaking hands and a pale face. She grabbed my hand tight and whispered urgently, "Grandma, we need to go there. Please, right now." My heart started beating fast like it wanted to jump out of my chest. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" I asked, trying to stay calm, but Emma's panicked look wouldn't let me. Shaking, she said, "I heard Miss Jessica on the phone in there earlier. She said bad things." Her words felt like a cold knife that paralyzed me. I stood up, took Emma's hand, and we walked quietly toward the shed. Sarah noticed and followed us, her face full of concern. The shed door was slightly open. I pushed it wider and looked inside. There on a shelf was Jessica's phone. She must have left it there. The screen was still lit up, showing text messages that were still open. I picked up the phone with trembling hands, feeling the world get smaller around me, leaving just Emma, me, and that phone screen. I read the messages. They were between Jessica and someone saved as M. The words made my blood turn to ice. "The old woman trusts me now. After we get married, I'll convince Robert to put her in a home. We can sell her house and split the cash." Another message said, "The kid is in the way. I'll ship her off to boarding school. Robert won't fight me once I'm his wife." A few words, but they felt like lightning hitting my whole body. I held the phone tight in my hand, feeling it burn my skin. Jessica, the woman I tried to accept as part of my family, wanted to destroy us. She wanted to take everything from us and hurt Emma. I squeezed Emma's hand, feeling her small fingers shake in mine. Sarah looked at the messages and her face went white. "We have to show Robert," she said, in a voice filled with anger and pain. I nodded, my legs feeling heavy, but my heart pushing me to act. Near the barbecue grill, I saw Robert talking and laughing with friends. Their laughter sounded wrong compared to the storm raging inside me. I walked straight to him and put the phone in his hand without saying anything. "Read this," I said in a voice that shook with anger and fear. Robert looked at the phone, and I saw his face go from confusion to shock. His hands started shaking as he read the messages. "What is this?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper, looking at me and then at Emma like he was trying to find a different explanation. Jessica, in her tight white dress, walked over, frowning with fake surprise. "What's going on? Why does everyone look so serious?" she said in a soft voice, but I saw panic flash in her eyes. I looked at her directly, my heart filled with anger and fear. "My granddaughter almost got hurt because of you," I said, my voice shaking with emotion. "You wanted to destroy our family." My words fell like thunder, making the whole backyard go quiet. Some people's mouths dropped open in shock, while others started whispering, their eyes moving from me to Jessica. Jessica let out a forced laugh, trying to keep her act together. "Excuse me, Mrs. Thompson, but there's no proof of anything. Are you going to believe some text messages?" she said with a mocking tone, trying to make me look like a paranoid old woman. Some guests started talking with doubt. Maybe it's a misunderstanding. Who would plan something like that? The blood boiled in my veins. Jessica's nerve made me almost speechless. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip off that white dress to show everyone the truth. But I knew I had to stay calm for Emma, for my family. Suddenly, Sarah stood up, pulling Emma close to her and hugging her tight. Her eyes were red and focused on Jessica. "That's enough, Jessica." Her voice sounded cold but full of pain, like she couldn't hold it in anymore. Sarah stepped forward and her hand moved fast, slapping Jessica across the face. The sharp sound echoed through the whole backyard. The dry, loud smack broke the silence and the fake atmosphere. Everyone froze, including me. Jessica put her hand on her cheek, her eyes wide with shock, and then turned to Robert, starting to cry. "You see? She's jealous and that's why she's attacking me. What did I do to deserve this?" Sarah didn't back down, her fists clenched and her voice broken with anger. "The only evil person here is you. You wanted to hurt an innocent child and steal from this family." Her words cut through the heavy air of the backyard. The looks of doubt started focusing on Jessica, and I saw her freeze, her fake smile disappearing. Robert stood frozen. His eyes moved from me to Sarah to Jessica, like he was trapped between two different worlds. "Sarah, calm down," he said in a shaking voice, but I could tell he wasn't sure who to believe anymore. The whispers of the guests grew like a wave that brought all eyes toward me, toward Jessica, and toward Emma, my little granddaughter, who was trembling in Sarah's arms. Jessica tried to keep her fake calm, but I saw her hands shake when she talked. "This is slander. Someone is trying to ruin our engagement." Her voice was sharp, but I saw the panic in her eyes, like her perfect mask was starting to break. I couldn't stand her nerve anymore. The anger inside me exploded like fire. I held up the phone high so everyone could see. "Then explain these messages," I shouted in a voice so cold it made even the music from the speakers seem quiet. "Explain how you plan to throw me in a home and send Emma away." The whole backyard fell silent. Jessica's face went pale, her lips pressed tight, and her eyes looked for a way out. But there was no way out now. She didn't say another word, and that silence, for me, was the clearest confession of all. Robert stood frozen, his hand shaking as he reached for Emma, looking with horror at the woman he was going to marry. His voice cracked like he was trying to hold on to hope that it was all a mistake, but his eyes, moving from the phone to Emma, said everything. I saw his heart break, just like mine had when I discovered the evil plan. An uncle stood up and shook his head, disgusted. "I can't believe this." Such wickedness at a celebration. His voice shook like he was holding back anger. After Sarah's confrontation, a heavy silence took over the backyard. Jessica, the woman I once tried to accept, stood there, her face white and her lips pressed together, looking for one last excuse. But the truth was exposed, and she had nowhere to run. Robert, my son, walked slowly toward her, his face tense and his eyes red, and asked, "Jessica, tell me the truth. Did you write these messages?" His voice shook like he was begging for some small hope that it was all wrong, but I knew that deep down he felt the painful truth too. Jessica took a step back, trying to force a smile, but her eyes showed her panic. "You don't believe me," she said in a broken voice, like she was trying to hold on to the last bit of Robert's trust. "This is all their plan against me." "I didn't do anything." But her words sounded weak, like wind about to die before a storm. I looked at her, my heart heavy with anger and pain. This woman I thought would make my son happy was now standing in front of me like a stranger, a danger I hadn't seen before. Sarah, my adopted daughter, put her hand on Robert's shoulder and said in a voice she was trying hard to control, "Emma could have been hurt because of this woman." Her words were as sharp as a knife. Jessica yelled desperately, "Shut up! You're just a jealous troublemaker." But Sarah didn't move. She was shaking with anger, but stood firm like a shield for Emma. "How dare you call me jealous?" Sarah answered in an icy voice. "Look at this child and tell me you didn't plan to send her away." Emma held on to me, her small hand squeezing mine like she was afraid of being pulled into the nightmare. The guests started standing up. The party atmosphere was completely broken. A family friend, Mr. Harrison, hit the table with anger. "This is disgraceful. We can't let this go." Whispers of support grew like waves that surrounded Jessica with looks of contempt from everyone. Robert, caught between truth and feelings, cried out, his voice broken with pain and anger. "Emma is my daughter. You wanted to send my daughter away and put my mother in a home?" His words were like a direct stab to Jessica's heart, and I saw her start crying. But those tears, I knew, weren't because she was sorry, but because she got caught. I held up the phone and said in a firm voice, "Anyone who tries to hurt my granddaughter and destroy this family will never be welcome here." My words rang out clear and strong, like a final judgment. Jessica looked up, her eyes full of anger, but I saw defeat in her face. She had lost not just to me, but to the truth. Robert's friends approached and, in a polite but firm way, asked Jessica to leave the party. "Mum, please leave," one of them said in a cold voice. Jessica backed away looking for help, but nobody took her side. Many guests shook their heads, leaving their plates and drinks and sighing with disappointment. "Unbelievable," one whispered. "How can someone be so cruel?" Another said, horrified. Robert stood frozen, his hands on his head, like he was trying to keep his world from falling apart. Then, like he didn't have strength to stand anymore, he slowly bent down in front of Emma. His voice choked. "Sweetie, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, baby, for not protecting you." I saw tears run down his face, and I felt my heart break in two. I helped Robert stand up, squeezing his shoulders, and said in a serious but confident voice, "Thank God we found out in time. This fake happiness has to end right here and now." I looked at Jessica, who was walking away with people staring at her with contempt, and in my heart, I knew she never was and never would be part of this family. In the days after that nightmare engagement party, my family was caught in a quiet storm, where wounds still hurt and questions hung in the air. I felt like I had just woken up from a bad dream where I almost lost Emma, my granddaughter, who I love more than anything in the world. The story of the failed engagement spread everywhere, from the small neighborhood streets to conversations with distant relatives. The house phone kept ringing. Some people blamed Robert for trusting Jessica blindly. Others felt sorry for Emma, the innocent child who was almost the victim of an evil plan. But for me, every call was just a painful reminder of what we went through. Robert became quiet after what happened. He was no longer the happy man from the party. Instead, he took Emma to and from school in silence every day, his eyes full of pain and guilt. The name Jessica, like a curse, was never mentioned in the house again. I looked at Robert with a hurting heart, but I knew he needed time to heal, to find himself again after being betrayed by the person he thought he loved. I didn't blame him because I understand that love can blind people, but I also knew that our family had to get back up and move forward. I continued to take care of Emma like I had since Karen left us. I cooked her favourite foods like mac and cheese or chocolate pudding, trying to give her back a feeling of safety. But the person who really helped heal Emma's heart wasn't me, but Sarah, my adopted daughter. Every morning she would carefully pack Emma's lunch for school, carefully choosing foods that were safe and healthy. She would even write a little note for the teacher explaining that Emma needed extra attention, along with a smiley face drawn with marker that made Emma happy. "Aunt Sarah, your drawings are so cute," Emma would say when she opened her lunchbox, and I would see her eyes light up like part of her childhood joy had come back. Every afternoon, Sarah would take Emma to the nearby park. I used to watch them from far away, seeing how she taught her to swing higher, showing her how to pump her legs to go up in the air. Once Emma fell off the monkey bars and Sarah ran to her, picked her up, brushed the dirt off her clothes and said softly, "It's okay, honey. I'm right here." Emma's clear laughter rang out, a sound I thought we had lost forever, and it was like medicine for my broken heart. I looked at Sarah with so much gratitude because she wasn't just like a sister to Emma, but also like a second mother, filling the empty space that Karen had left. One night when Emma had a bad stomachache, I saw Sarah stay up all night by her side. She sat in a chair next to the bed, rubbing Emma's back in circles, while she quietly told her the story of a brave butterfly that flew across the ocean. I stood at the door watching silently, and I saw that Robert's eyes followed Sarah for a long time. It was a complicated look, full of thankfulness and regret, like he was realizing something he had ignored for so long. I didn't say anything. I just walked away quietly, giving them their space. But in my heart, I started hoping that maybe there was light at the end of our family's dark tunnel. One evening during one of the rare dinners where we all sat together around the table with the pot roast I had made, Emma suddenly looked up, her green eyes focused on Sarah. "I want Aunt Sarah to be my mommy," she said in a soft but clear voice, like it was something she had been thinking about for a long time. Everyone at the table went silent. Sarah's face turned red, and she looked down, holding her fork tight like she was trying to hide her embarrassment. Robert froze with watery eyes, like Emma's words had touched something very deep in his heart. I smiled. I put my hand on Robert's shoulder and said in a warm voice, "Real happiness, son, doesn't come from fancy parties or pretty dresses, but from an honest heart that knows how to truly love." Robert looked at me, then at Sarah, and I saw a small spark of hope shine in his eyes. Time passed, and Jessica disappeared completely from our lives like toxic smoke that had blown away. Emma became a happy girl again, always staying close to Sarah with her favourite doll and the drawings Sarah made for her. I saw her running and playing in the backyard, and I felt great relief, but also a sharp pain, thinking about everything she had to go through. One day, Robert took Sarah's hand. He stood in front of me in the living room and said in a shaking but firm voice, "Mum, I know I made a terrible mistake. I was blind. I put Emma in danger. But this time, I don't want to let go of the person who has truly been there for our family." Sarah looked down with red cheeks, but I saw a beautiful smile on her face. I nodded as tears quietly rolled down my cheeks. "Son, the only thing I want is for you and Emma to be happy," I said in a choked voice. That night, after Emma fell asleep, I sat by the window watching the silver moon that shined over the quiet street. Its soft light was like a reminder that even though our family had been through dark times, light always finds a way to break through. I whispered to myself, "Family isn't always made of blood. Sometimes it's chosen with love and bravery." After that terrible engagement party, a new chapter full of light had truly begun for my family. I looked toward the backyard where the swing that Sarah and Emma played on was still moving slightly in the breeze. And I knew that although the old wounds might never fully heal, we would keep going forward together, with love and strength holding us up. After going through all this, I understood something very important. In life, there are losses that can't be replaced, betrayals that break your heart, but true love will always be the light that shows the way forward. Family isn't only built with blood relations, but also with choices, with the courage to protect each other from darkness and danger. It's sacrifice and real love that brings lasting happiness, not fake appearances. I want everyone to remember to listen carefully. You have to let your heart guide you because sometimes a small moment of paying attention can save a life. And it's kindness that helps us get through nights that seem to have no end. The story you just heard has been changed in names and places to protect the identity of the people involved. We don't tell this to judge anyone, but with the hope that someone will listen and stop to think. How many mothers and grandmothers are suffering in silence inside their own homes? I truly wonder if you were in my place, what would you have done? Would you have chosen to stay quiet to keep peace, or would you have been brave enough to face everything to protect your family? I would like to know your opinion because every story can become a light that shows the way for others. God always blesses us, and I'm sure that courage will lead us to better days. Meanwhile, on the final screen, I will leave you two of the channel's favourite stories. I'm sure you will be surprised.